This video will contain spoilers to the following movies.
Thou shalt not win this battle, demon of hell.
Thou hast mistaken thyself for one destined for victory.
I will have thee destroyed, and nevermore shall my kingdom be tormented by your power.
This beam I am launching at thee now will never fail in your destruction.
My prince, my sweet, sweet prince. I loved him as though he were my son. He deserved not to separate his soul from his body.
Hold your weeping, woman, for I live.
By God, you do live.
Oh, come on, man. You're a freaking kid's film. What's the point of trying to fake us out with the death of the protagonist? That is the topic of this episode of Recurring Movie Pests. Yeah, they're kids' films, therefore kids watch them a lot, but sometimes so do adults. The average adult is probably not going to fall for one of those fake-out moments where it seems as if the protagonist has been ultimately defeated after a difficult battle, the body laying on the ground, or they don't emerge from the water after a little bit, or just not seen until moments later, but manage to get right back up, ending with a happy ending. I know that not every story has a happy ending, even if it's a kid's film, but it's still kind of a lame twist, don't you think? It can be difficult to decipher which films fall into this category if it's not very obvious at first, or if it's not a kid's film. There's plenty of instances you might be able to come up with. But I think the film that may be a humongous offender is the Lady and the Tramp remake on Disney+. Yeah, we all know how the original ended, I hope. Tramp is now owned by Darling and Jim Deere, and he and Lady have puppies! Also in the original, the Bloodhound Trusty is nearly crushed to death by a wagon, but it only broke his leg. In the remake, they must have thought,
nah, that's not common enough. Trusty's not gonna get crushed by the wagon. That honor would go to Tramp. Let's have the characters mourn him before he eventually stands.
yeah, I have a feeling that's literally what the company's thinking, as if they knew it would be a crappy idea. The belief is all based on how greedy Disney has been lately, with all the remakes and all that property they have been purchasing. Don't you think they have a big enough monopoly over the film industry? Getting back on topic, why change that part of the climax so drastically if you're going to have the same happy ending anyway? Not to mention, use a cliche that you've even used back to the Bronze Age, as evident in films such as Robin Hood and The Great Mouse Detective. Well, maybe even before the Bronze Age, but same idea. It's not just Disney who is guilty of this. 2015 saw the release of Minions. Oh boy, it's about time I talk about the prequel to the Despicable Me films. Near the end, when Giant Kevin is holding a missile in his mouth and grabbing hold of Scarlet Overkill, who is flying away with a rocket dress, the missile explodes, and we only see the explosion as the Minions hum Taps, not long before Kevin, shrunk back to regular size, comes flying in with his overalls parachute, which is somehow still giant. Ouch! Screw up aside, this probably would have worked in a better movie with a similar plot where the lead characters were actually capable of holding up their own movie, and if that character was actually making a self-sacrifice rather than a big fake out, just a big screw you to emotionally engaged moviegoers. That's another gripe I have here, not just for the fact that I hate these characters, but for how illogical it is. How did that not kill him? Let's step back into older territory where this is actually very funny and makes sense, and also where the fake out is not at the end of the movie. Back to the Future Part 3. Marty and Buford face off, but Marty drops his gun, allowing for Buford to shoot the chest. I saw the fake out coming, but at the same time, not really. That reveal of Marty hiding an iron stove door under his poncho is just hilarious, and, you know, Marty's got to credit himself for that. I mean, think about it. In the first movie, Marty wrote a letter which would be read by Doc in 1985, revealing that he was going to get shot. Of course, he took the precautions necessary, and then Marty got that same idea knowing he's going to have to confront Buford before going back to the future. Oh, that setup and payoff method. That's why I love these movies so much. Mr. Peabody and Sherman from 2014. This is when they're stuck in the Trojan War, and Peabody and Sherman have just managed to get Penny unstuck from the Trojan horse. While Sherman and Penny got out of there, Peabody was still on the Trojan horse and it rolled off a cliff. The reveal of his safety comes after Sherman and Penny traveled to the time when Peabody was having some fun with the Petersons, and then... Do I have to say everything? I was an optimistic kid when I saw this in the theater, so I wasn't falling for any of that stuff. I just didn't think the thought of the death of the lead character would ever exist. Looking back at this movie, it's pretty decent as far as I'm concerned, but I understand if you don't like it. Raiders of the Lost Ark. While this does not necessarily fake out the death of the protagonist, this still counts. A basket, which looked like the one Marion was being carried in, was taken to the back of a Nazi truck filled with explosives, and when Indy caught up and shot at the truck, it blew up, which would have meant that Marion was dead, but she was definitely in a different basket because later we see her in a tent being held captive by the Nazis. I bet you were expecting the fake-outs I'm talking about to be revealed as fake-outs immediately. You know, it would have been interesting if she was actually dead, but later on, during that fight of the Nazi plane, she was using its machine guns to fend off a soldier, but in the process hitting a fuel dump, later making the plane explode. But the first time watching, you'd have no idea that would happen. But the reveal of Marion's safety was actually kind of funny to me. It's so ridiculous that you just gotta laugh. Sometimes the character really does die, but gets brought back to life at the end of the movie. Beauty and the Beast is a famous animated movie that does this, but it was in a clever way and truly drives the message home. The Beast gets stabbed in the back by Gaston, who then falls to his death. The Beast's mortal wounds don't hold him back too long because Belle has shown her love for him and the spell is broken, returning the Beast to his human form. How could this possibly be butchered? Oh, the remake? I take that back. The Last Unicorn, Rankin Bass film based on Peter S. Beagle's novel. I'm not sure if a lot of you have heard of this movie, but ignore the simple animation compared to other films. This is a good one. In this film, Prince Lear is attempting to guard the unicorn from the Red Bull, but ends up getting trampled. After the bull gets driven to the sea and all the missing unicorns gather up a huge wave to destroy the castle of King Haggard, the unicorn touches her horn to the prince and restores his life. This is great because while the two cannot be together, the relationship developed between the unicorn and Lear is really nicely developed, and to see her restore life to the human prince is truly a touching moment if that's the type of deep entertainment you're looking for. It's not an animated film like many others. That's why this film made an impact on me. I know I've been talking about good examples, but this series is called Recurring Movie Pests, not Common Movie Angels. So I gotta name a negative example. How about Happily Ever After? That's a film with enough issues as it is. Dull, predictable, unfunny, pointless comic relief that goes literally nowhere, a villain that could have been cool but ruins his vibe. It gets even worse during the climax. First things first, there's the Shadow Man who has been protecting Snow White during the second half of the film. That's actually the prince under the spell of Lord Malice. There, I spared you the entire runtime of the film. Now you don't need to watch it. Anyway, while Snow White is being attacked by Malice, the Shadow Man charges at him and gets blasted to the ground. After Malice is defeated, Snow White mourns the death of her friend in front of Mother Nature, and because of, tears and love and all that nonsense, as if it was a big freaking surprise, Shadow Man is given back his life and his identity. Seriously, I honestly don't understand Malice's plan, but I'm not going to get into it. I already did that when I reviewed this movie 3 months ago. But we might as well add on to it. Malice had the chance to kill the prince and also Snow White, but doesn't for whatever reason. His plan is just flawed beyond belief. The Lord of the Rings. This goes for the books, the Peter Jackson films, and the animated Bakshi version. This is probably the best example of a death fake-out done well. It's not done in the same volume, but rather in the next one. You all recognize the scene where Gandalf breaks the bridge, sending the Balrog into the abyss, then gets dragged down with it. It's an emotional moment that works best in the Jackson film. Even if you've watched all 3 of these movies, this scene still gets to you. Gandalf is absent for the rest of the volume, but then comes back in the next one. Well, in the Bakshi version, it's later on in the same movie, since it covers Fellowship of the Ring and the first half of the Two Towers. In all 3 versions, he was fighting the Balrog after being dragged into the pit. Both of them die, and Gandalf comes back to Middle-earth as Gandalf the White, taking the place of Saruman as the new Chief of the Wizards. The idea of his return is so he can assist in saving all the land. Whoa! When Lord of the Rings wants to get deep, it can get very deep. Lastly, I want to bring up Clue. You know, the cult classic film based on the board game starring Tim Curry. This is an interesting case because it tricks you into thinking a character is dead, in this case Mr. Body, then the next time we see him, he's dead for real. Now think about that for a moment and understand how funny it is. They start up the mystery as to who killed Mr. Body before he was actually killed, and I didn't see it coming. It gets even more hilarious when we learn that Body was pretending to be dead to avoid the gunshot in the dark, then chasing the guests down the hall to the kitchen before eventually getting killed by someone from behind using a candlestick. Just think about how funny that is. Not to mention his body being found in the bathroom, toppling over Mrs. Peacock just as she was going there to powder her nose. It's all the movies I can think of listing that have this deal of making you think the character is dead, but revealing their safety later on. It can be funny if done well, and it actually fakes you out, but most of the time, it's stupid and very predictable, not to mention unnecessary. If you want to try to fake us out, then actually fake us out. Have some test screen audiences that are experienced in that field and never heard of the story you're telling. And if they see that fake out coming, omit it, or actually kill off the lead character. No, only kill off the lead character if there's a purpose for it, such as to deliver the message, like in Little Shop of Horrors, for instance.